Hey, welcome to the Single Barrel Podcast. My name is Deeb.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Scott.
So, we're starting a new podcast, a Single Barrel Podcast, and we want to kind of tell you a little bit about why we started this and our friendship. And so, Scott and I met back in pharmacy school, and one of the things that we shared in common was sports. It's something that always comes up. It's a topic that we love. It always seems to come up in conversation, and Scott, I think to the point like we're just both really big sports fans. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no matter how you look at it, what we're meeting for, talking about, or what occasion is going on, it always navigates back to sports. And so this just seemed like a natural podcast for us to kind of take under our wing and do the same things that we've kind of been doing with our friendship already.
Yeah, and I mean, when we were trying to like connect and figure out how to do this, I mean, part of the reason why we wanted to start this was you recently moved, right? Your family moved. We were living pretty close to each other. We were like 10 minutes away. We would hang out, and now you're miles away from, states away. So it's I can't come to your house. You can't come over. We can't have the conversations as easily in person. And so we
Yeah.
thought this is a fun way to do that, but also to get other people involved because we have a ton of friends who love sports and just a lot of people out there we know that really, really like sports and talking about sports.
Yeah. And just for historical, Deeb and I have met like a decade ago. We worked together for a few years. And then I moved halfway across the country. And so, we were brainstorming ways to kind of make sure we were trying to maintain the activities and the friendship and kind of the things we cared about in our lives. And we both really had passion for podcasting. So this is something we've wanted to try. This is something that he's got a little more experience with. And we're just diving in head first here. So happy to be here. Really excited about the Single Barrel Sports podcast.
Hell yeah, I'm excited as well. And like we talked about, we want this to be something fun. We want it to be enjoyable. One of the things that people might be wondering is, what are you going to talk about? Is it like only football, only basketball, NFL, etc.? I mean, I think you and I really we're seasonal. We're trying to think through like what's actually happening, what's big, what's going on during that time of the year. So
Mhm.
we like a lot of sports. I know we differ in our interests. Like, for example, I'm a huge golf fan. I'm trying to kind of get you into it.
Yeah.
You're a huge NHL fan. So we have some differences in some of the things that we like. And so we're going to try to really focus on, I think, different things throughout the year.
Yeah. And I think, as we think about seasonal, right now, we're looking at the beginning, the middle of December. It's really hot time for football. So we might talk a little bit more about that right now, but that doesn't mean this is a football podcast. As the winter goes on, I tend to watch more NBA and NHL. We just want to kind of follow the hot topics in sports and kind of help keep ourselves up to date on these things and just have hot conversations about them as well.
Yeah, for sure. Now tell us about the name.
Yeah, so Single Barrel Sports, Dave and I are both pretty big fans of bourbon. We've gone to Kentucky several times together and done the Bourbon Trail. It's actually kind of an annual tradition that I unfortunately did miss out on this year because of our move. However, I'll be back at the trail next year. It's something that we found that sharing memories, sharing stories, having conversations while sipping on some bourbon is a very nice synergy that I don't think only we have passion for. I think it's a very common thing that we like to try and kind of incorporate bourbon into these types of conversations. And hopefully we'll be able to do that and kind of relate to you in some ways. So single barrel is a bourbon reference here. Sports, that's the topic of the podcast. And we're kind of blending those two topics with the major emphasis still remaining on the sports.
But you left out the important part there, which is single barrel, right? And single barrel is something that you and I and a few other friends of ours really love. Single barrel means it's a very unique barrel that's picked in that warehouse, right? It's unlike any of the other barrels. So we want to make this something that's unique. We have some segments that we think are going to be really cool and making picks, trying to give you some foreshadowing there. But that single barrel piece is we want this to be something that's unique and hopefully a little bit different from some of the other types of podcasts that you're used to.
Yeah, and the opposite of a single barrel is just a blend where many barrels are involved and you got big batches of bourbon. And we're not trying to be like the blends. I don't think either of us consider ourselves the expert on any one sport or all sports. We're here to represent the casual, everyday sports fan who loves to talk about game because we love to talk about it too, often with a pour of bourbon in our hands.
Yeah, for sure. And, speaking of bets, what are we gonna do about bets, right? Betting is blown up. It's all over the place. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's hard to talk about sports without sports betting these days. Everyone's got a parlay going on or some fantasy football betting going on or, just silly bets with their friends, like wearing a dress in public if your team loses the big game. Um, so here at Single Barrel Sports, we're not oblivious to that. We do also kind of follow along with betting lines, whether it's money lines, spreads, props bets, parlays. Dave over here thinks parlays maybe aren't the best move, but come on, there's nothing more fun than a sports, small dollar sports parlay. So one of the things we will be doing is kind of discussing betting lines, sharing some thoughts and opinions, and occasionally maybe making some bets or predictions of our own so we can share if you want to kind of tail along. I do want to emphasize that this is not a gambling podcast. It will be a minor portion of it, but it is something we'll include both in our conversations here and on our social media pages, in particular on the X social media platform.
Yeah, and I agree, and you made the point there, like, I'm not a betting expert, I have a lot to learn, and so I'm looking forward to learning from people who interact with this podcast about, what is the world of betting? It's not really something that I'm into. I would tell people that whatever picks I make, you might wanna pick the opposite. I don't really have a great, track record, or it's kinda like that reverse psychology type thing that I like to do, especially in college football, but one of the cool things that you and I also share is fantasy football, fantasy sports,
Mm.
brackets. We like doing that sort of stuff. So I think we're going to try to get people involved, maybe start up some of those types of opportunities, see if some people are interested in joining into those. And that's always something fun to look forward to.
Yeah, and you're teeing up a little teaser for later in the episode here today. So if you guys are interested in brackets, please stick around. We will be talking about a way to get involved because, as Deep mentioned earlier, anything we're talking about here, we want to include you in as well. Everything is more fun when shared together. So we're going to be talking about stories, opinions, hot takes, but we welcome any comments or questions or predictions. And we certainly want to include people in some of our bracket pools and things of that nature as well.
So, Scott, how often can people look forward to a podcast episode or hearing from us maybe on social media?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're gonna have some weekly episodes here, so once a week we'll drop an episode for the podcast itself. But we'll be interacting throughout the week on our other social media platforms, which maybe is a good time for us to kind of share what those platforms are. So you can find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and then our Spotify episodes or our podcast episodes are going to be on Spotify and Apple Music as well. Now, I know I just listed a bunch of social media here without really saying what all of our platform handles are. To simplify things, you can find all of our handles on our primary website, singlebarrelsports.com. So please check that out. If you subscribe to our website, you'll be able to get emails directly from us with updates about the podcast. But certainly, if you just use that website to find our social media pages, you'll find our content there.
Yeah, and that's such a cool page. I didn't really know a lot about that, so I appreciated you setting that up. So that's a really awesome tool. It's got everything you need. You just have one link, click on it, and you can get to whatever you want. I know a lot of people sometimes they don't use, specific websites or whatever. I'm still getting used to it being called X. I know it's been a couple years, but
Yeah. Hey,
no,
actually, talking about that, question for everyone listening here. How many people are calling X X, or how many people are still calling that Twitter? And if you find us on Twitter, let us know. I'm curious about that. We'll make a poll later on tonight so you can find us there and kind of let us know what you're calling it these days.
and then the other thing that you had mentioned is that with that website, people can actually subscribe, right? Like, what does that do for them?
Yep. So the subscribe, it doesn't cost anything. We're not going to blow you up with your emails or anything like that. But what it does is it actually adds you to our email mailing list. So it's a way for us to maintain contact with you directly to provide very specific updates about the podcast itself. Maybe when we drop a new episode, we'll kind of let our subscribers know. Again, it's just a way for us to communicate, and actually you can even reply to those emails. So if you had anything you wanted to kind of share back with us, you didn't want to post it on social media, you can actually reply through our email list as well. um, so there's other ways to get a hold of us. While I'm on the topic of avoiding, if you don't want to post on social media, we also do have an email address. Do you want to share kind of what that is?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's singlebarrelsports@gmail.com. It wasn't taken. The name wasn't taken. We got lucky. We were one of one. So, really easy to remember that. Singlebarrelsports@gmail.com.
Excellent. Now, I think one of the things that might be helpful, we've kind of talked about why we're doing the podcast and what to expect from it. Um, let's talk about ourselves a little bit. I think it's kind of nice to share a little bit about our past, our histories, and hopefully open up a little bit so people understand us as individuals a little more. Why don't you go ahead and start? Maybe just kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure some of the people out there that will be watching, you may know us. Kind of, it's maybe this video gets picked up later on. Maybe there's people that don't know us out there. So I think it's good to kind of lay that landscape of like, who are we? Why do you care about us?
Mm.
Why should you tune in to this podcast? So um, for me, I currently live in the state of Michigan, and that's where Scott moved away from. Boo. I am an avid Oregon Ducks fan, as you can see here. Let's go Ducks, number one. Let's go as of today, as of this recording. So hoping that we can get through the playoffs, but I am a pharmacist by schooling and trade. So I went to school to be a pharmacist, and that's actually where Scott and I both met. We met while we were in school at a pharmacy conference, and I thought, you know, this guy is really interesting. I should probably get to know him a little bit better. So, we were talking about all sorts of stuff back then, but obviously sports was one of them. I am married. I have a dog, a very awesome dog. So love him. He's named after my favorite bourbon. His name is Weller. So that's a fun fact about me and my dog. And I know our significant other, Scott, are very close friends as well. We got to
Mhm.
know each other, while you all were living in Michigan. And so we were all pretty close friends. We got to go on a few trips together. I remember our Greece trip was really awesome. And
Oh yeah.
definitely a lot of memories that we made overseas. I'm trying to think. The only other thing that I will mention is and we'll talk a little bit more about this maybe after you do your intro, but we can tell people too about things that we've done in the past and kind of what got us to this point where we're podcasting and video podcasting, and what are some of the
Yeah.
things we've worked on together in the past. So I'll let you go ahead and then we can talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important. Again, introducing myself. My name is Scott. As Deep mentioned, I was living in Michigan, just moved to North Carolina. So it was a bit of a hike for us. But we got out just before the Michigan winter. So we're pretty excited about that. We have not seen snow yet this year. My favorite team, St. Louis Blues. Out of all sports, football is probably my favorite sport to watch. Hockey is my favorite sport to watch live and in person. And out of any sport, the St. Louis Blues are my number one team. But you also catch me rooting for the Michigan Wolverines and the UNC Tar Heels, St. Louis Cardinals as well, though I don't watch baseball as much as I used to. Like Deeb, as he mentioned, I am a pharmacist by trade as well. So we did meet as students. We worked together as professionals, and we've maintained contact beyond that. It's just some personal things about me. I'm married as well. My wife Raven, if you're listening, I love you. We also have a dog who is named after a beer, not a bourbon. His name is we call him Obi. He was named Oberon after the beer from Bell's Brewing. And we have a son who is about 7.5 months old. His name is Parker. So that's been a big focus of our life recently. But yeah, Deeb, let's talk about some of the stuff we've done that got us here. You want to take it away?
Yeah, so both of us, another thing that we both share in common is video games, believe it or not. So, we
Mhm.
kind of started to figure that out over time. You actually helped me to put together this, beautiful PC that I'm currently actually on, and that was an adventure together. I think kind of was it during COVID maybe? I think that was kind of a
Yeah, it was on like the second half of COVID. Yeah, where Michigan was still way shut down compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, so we put together a PC, I got myself all set up, and from there, we both got into streaming. So we were, big in kind of the getting to know about streaming. What does it look like? How do you set that up? We created our own community. Anyone out there who's familiar or listening, Team Neat, give them a shout out.
Shout out to Neat.
There's always bourbon involved in something that we're doing, right? Team Neat. It's kind of based around that topic as well. But we created a gaming community. We were hosting like weekend events for people to stream, or yeah, like a monthly or whatever. It was like a quarterly event where we did it. What was it, like 10 or 11 times throughout 2 years?
Yeah, I think
I think.
technically 11 with you and I,
Yeah.
and 10 with a larger community. So yeah, we did a lot.
Yeah, and we even had an in-person meetup with people. I mean, these are people from all across the country, people that we, met that were awesome and love gaming and got to actually meet, many of them in person, which, was one of my favorite experiences in the past few years. So, I think that that's kinda like what got us to this point is we loved the streaming, we loved that community aspect, and both of us, you're still in education, but, I was also at a few years ago in education. So I think we both really like that kind of that public speaking
Mhm.
portion of it. So naturally, podcasting I think was a good fit.
Yeah, and we kinda learned about video editing, we learned about some sound settings, we even did a few songs together. Maybe one day we'll visit that on this podcast, but, there's been a lot of experiences that we've had, a lot of really cool people that we've met along the way, and, we didn't wanna lose that, right? We wanted to maintain our there's something that to kinda connect our friendship, but also a sense of community that kinda connects us with those, the people who wanna follow along on the journey with us because, you know, like I said at the beginning and like Deep says many times, it's more fun with everybody involved.